I'm not going to rule it out, Kyle. I'm really not. DarbyCast, Wildcard Friday. Kyle and I, we were just talking about atypical professions arising out of extenuating circumstances. Specifically, as it relates to pest control. If you're new here, leave, like right now. Because we are going to talk about Kyle becoming a combat bard. And what does that look like, right? Because we hear those words coupled together, combat bard, and some of us go Dungeons and Dragons, and some of us go to the Pied Piper of Hamlin, which in the 1300s is when the story first came about. And in German, the story is called Der Rattenfänger von Hamlin. Pretty powerful sounding. But Kyle, you could be Der Rattenfänger von America. They'd sing songs about you. And why is this coming up right now? Because I read an article on popularsciencemagazine.com, which as far as I know is neither popular nor exceptionally scientific. These are the kind of people who are telling you that some women, according to science, have massive penises. And so you got to take most of what idiots say about science with a grain of salt. We know this. But this article that I read was talking about a rat infestation happening in major cities. And as we all know, most people who listen to this podcast are not dopey enough to still live in a city. But that doesn't mean that huge problems aren't incubating in cities as we speak. Humongous rats, the size of chihuahuas. Also, chihuahuas are a disgusting dog breed. There are so many better breeds out there, and some people opt in on chihuahuas. Do we need to open back the insane asylums, specifically for chihuahua owners? Quite obviously, we want to throw pit bull owners in there as well. But I was reading this article. Let's stay on track, sort of. Kyle, rats. They're everywhere. And nobody knows what to do about them. Because people aren't willing to look to history and powerful works of fiction to come up with a solution. Kyle, imagine you had a trombone/flamethrower. Okay, Kyle, combat bard in the pest control space. You learn forbidden melodies. Lure rats out of their strongholds. And then you blast them, Kyle. And people would pay you money for that. You know, in this Popular Science article, somebody was saying that our best defense against vermin, and I quote this, are humble canines. Who is employing some of these journalists? Anybody who can't just say dogs? Humble canines can help us with the rat problem. Get out. You're a fraud. But Kyle, imagine if you had a custom trombone and you were accompanied by 3, maybe 4 humble canines, or what normal people call man's best friend, or dogs. And I think you go with German Shepherds, Kyle. You ain't bringing a bunch of idiot chihuahuas, right? What would they do? They'd be overrun by the rats if you tried to show up and clean out the sewers. But let's do a quick refresher on the story of the Pied Piper of Hamlin, Kyle. City had a rat problem. Cool guy shows up, knows how to play music that's pleasing to rats. How do you figure that out? One day you're at band practice, and all of a sudden a bunch of disease-addled rats pour into the space, and then they just start grooving, having the time of their lives. I think after the first time that happens, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, I wonder if I could monetize this. Any honest musician who found themselves in that scenario would be asking themselves that. Because life as a musician, feast or famine, right, Kyle? You're either on top of your game and singing about your battles with terminal depression to the masses, or you're pacing around the back of a Ruby Tuesdays, wondering if you should explore the vocation of prostitution. But the Pied Piper knew how to rock a rat crowd. He shows up in the city of Hamlin in the midst of a rat crisis. And because of his odd skill set that he developed that one fateful day at band practice, the rats weren't going up to the drummer and saying, "Nice beat." They were saying, "Hey, Pied Piper, you're it. You're the star of this show." And in a lot of ways, that probably felt pretty good. But he's got this skill set. He goes to the town's mayor and says, "I can see that you have disgusting vermin all over the place." The mayor says, "We try to get humble canines to fix this, but no dice." Pied Piper, reasonable guy, sensible guy, slaps the mayor in the face and says, "Just call them dogs. Open and shut case. But I think I could help you out, but it's going to cost you." Mayor says, "Okay, just do whatever. My city is pretty unlivable at this point, and people are starting to point the finger at me. And truth be told, I'm a big part of this problem." Pied Piper says, "How so? What do you mean?" Mayor's a little drunk, gets a little too honest, and says, "I've been skimming off the top of the city budget that was typically allocated to sanitation workers, and I've been dipping into the military budget. I used to have soldiers at the ready who would just take pop shots at these things. Not a big issue." Pied Piper says, "I am not a close friend of yours. That was a bit of an overshare. I don't want to be friends with you. After this is all done, I'm just going to perform the services of leading the rats out to a rock concert, getting them out of here. But you're a piece of shit, Mayor." Mayor's still drinking as this conversation's happening, and he says, I know. And we like that honesty out of the mayor, but change your behavior. Do the right thing. He didn't make any promises of saying, "I'm going to do the right thing in the future." He's just going to go straight back to skimming off the top. But the Pied Piper is pretty fired up that he gets to play a great concert. An atypical concert, I will give you that. But he's got butterflies in his basket because it's going to be a pretty huge audience. Boy, is this city overrun with four-legged gutter filth. What's that? Rats. Pied Piper starts playing a tune that would surprise a lot of us. Take a pause. Imagine a tune that would shock you. Not in a negative way, but not positive either. But the song's not for us, right? It's for the rats. Rats just start pouring out of everywhere. And then the Pied Piper leads them to a lake, and the music's so good that the rats drown themselves. Rats don't know how to clap, so really, that was the next best thing they could do to show their appreciation for the concert. At least that's what some scholars have hypothesized. Pied Piper goes back to that alcoholic mayor and says, "Okay, rat problem solved. You're going to need to pay me now." Mayor says, "Sorry, can't do it. Got no money left. I spent everything that I was supposed to send your way at the track. I was betting on some humble canine races. And after that, some humble canine fights." What a piece of garbage this guy is. Not only for not paying his debts, but like, who is into dog racing and dog fights? Slippery slope, right? You start off going to the dog track. It's not horse racing, but you're drunk enough to not care. certainly in the case of this mayor. You get so wound up in dog-related entertainment that it just eclipses the significance of all other things you got going on in your life. But then one day, you find that it's not cutting it anymore. You've seen dog races, it's all pretty straightforward. And then you get into dog fighting, otherwise known as the Michael Vick surprise. What a fall from grace this mayor had. But the Pied Piper's pissed. He threw a killer concert, solved a major problem, and then had nothing to show for it. And this is where that story gets pretty dark. Then he decides to play a different tune, one that's pleasing to human ears. He attracts the attention of all the children in the village, and then he leads them to the lake and they all die. And kids, unlike rats, know how to clap, so we all have to assume that there was force involved and that the Pied Piper got his hands dirty. Very inappropriate. Mayor is not thrilled about this, and he says, "Hey, you shouldn't have done that." And it's like, you know what, Mr. Mayor, you fucked me over. I did bring a nuke to a fist fight in terms of my response to your lack of compensation. But how about you just remember that being a musician isn't easy? I want you to remember this forever. Mayor's got 3 dead kids, but frankly, the mayor wasn't paying attention to his kids anyway. He's too busy spending time at the dog track. And eventually, shooting heroin and snorting meth in a dilapidated shack, watching pit bulls maul each other. Slippery slope, right? Alcoholism leading to low ethics plays, leading to gambling addiction, leading to drug usage. It's all related. This mayor's trying to fill a hole in his soul. Was the Pied Piper justified in killing all those kids, Kyle? Probably not. But we weren't there. I can't really think of a strong case for the mass murder of children. Can't come up with a story that suits that. But just like pay entertainers when they do a good job. I think that's the moral of the story that some people oftentimes miss. But let's get back to you, Kyle, combat bard. Imagine if you had a trombone/flamethrower, right? Because there's no guarantee that you're going to be near a body of water. But with the correct practice, couple visits to some websites that really none of us would ever be comfortable visiting, you learn enchanting, forbidden rat tunes. Rattunes.com, Kyle. That's probably not a website right now, but it should be. And that's maybe a parallel project for you to pursue, Kyle. So when maybe other people want to pick up this torch and do some pest control in their area, you will save them the trouble of going to some darknet site where they have to sift through snuff films and pretty compelling advertisements claiming that for the right price, you can get a passport, fake passport, change your identity. If we want to effectively scale this idea, Kyle, you might have to bite the bullet. Scour the dark web, locate the rat tunes, and avoid the obstacles that are all over the dark web, Kyle. The temptations of a fake passport and all that goes with that. And there's no other way to do this, right, Kyle? The rat tunes exist exclusively, right now at least, on the dark web. All that being said, though, Kyle, think about this. I don't think you have any idea how grateful people would be for this high-integrity leadership play if you pulled it off, Kyle. Excavating rat tunes, compiling them so other people don't have to. That's what great leaders do. Maybe not this specifically, but high-quality leaders blaze a trail for those that they're leading. But I will warn you, Kyle, of the seductive allure of the dark web and fake passports. And let's not try to pretend like we haven't had that fleeting thought in the back of our imagination. Kyle, all of us, all the DarbyCast doctors, what would it feel like to start fresh? To have that fake passport? Maybe not even go to another country, but just move to Wichita, Kansas. Be able to introduce yourself confidently and say, my name's Bourbon St. Clair, and I'm the assistant manager at a Lady Foot Locker. Kyle, we've all had the thoughts, right? Move to Birmingham, Alabama with a new lease on life. And the name, Jasper Chloroform, designer of tasteful robes and kimonos, marketed specifically towards people who aren't all in on the official story of 9/11. The obvious name for your LLC is Never Forget, but you, as a liberated leader, would probably name it I'm Not Buying It, LLC, which, in truth, could hurt sales, but for all the right reasons. Some of the ladies listening to this right now are saying, what lanes are open for me? I'm a woman, after all. And I'm glad you asked. Bismarck, North Dakota. A good name to use would be, perhaps, Yolanda O' Mondays. Open up a milkshake joint, but have the courage to not cave to the pressure and temptation of selling regular ice cream. You're a milkshake gal. Move to Naples, Florida. Assume the role of Marmalade Bethlehem. Unemployed. And you're fine with it. I'm telling you, Kyle, this does sound appealing. And we've all had these thoughts. We can't be afraid to talk about how much society sucks and how much everybody kind of wants a fresh start. Not necessarily from their life, but certainly we'd love to see this country get a fresh start. But sometimes the best we can do is muse deeply on what it would be like to be named Guff Lancaster and host a radio show that only gets broadcast on ham radio. Unlicensed, obviously. You know, according to Popular Science, both the magazine and society at large, you can change your gender. That's wrong. But you could change your name with a fake passport, show up somewhere, and try something new. And this has so many parallels to the Pied Piper of Hamlin, if you think about it. That society's a mess. Politicians are corrupt. Literal and metaphorical rats running everything, treating people wrong. You know how many of the village folk were probably tempted to get whatever the medieval equivalent of a passport was? Mix it up, try something new. But that is so inappropriate in a lot of ways. They had to outsource to the Pied Piper, who ended up killing a bunch of kids. That's what you get when you gamble on strange foreigners. The people of Hamlin needed not to run away, but to see the problems and then step up. But that doesn't mean that temptation isn't there to escape, to move to Montana, to move to one of the Dakotas. Flip a coin and just say, South Dakota it is. But that temptation is there. Kyle, I remember that one day you came in and you said, I want a fake identity. And I said, what would your name be? And you said, Ferrari Butterworth. And when I asked what you would do, you said, head up loss prevention at a couple Ross Dress for Less stores. We all have our fantasies, Kyle. But what I'm trying to tell you is that if you could navigate these sketchy websites that had very tempting pitfalls in the lane of fake identities and new possible futures, to compile music that is pleasing to rats, put it on rattunes.com. Obviously, right now, if you would, see if it's available first. Rattunes.net, I think we got to be comfortable with that if rattunes.com isn't available, but it just doesn't have the same kind of gravity. But then we start a business, Kyle. You start making how-to videos showing people what it looks like to play the flamethrower trombone. And for subscribers, you throw in a couple extra videos and say, this is how you handle it if somebody tries to stiff you on the payment. And anybody who's anybody getting into the rat extermination game is quite obviously going to want to know, how do I handle things when everything falls apart and goes south? You're going to need a different tune. The rats like certain songs, whereas people are a little bit more keen on others. The Pied Piper knew that. Very gifted musician. Very gifted. Kyle. But subscribing would be the right choice, because you would want to know what that song sounded like for the situations that weren't even in the zip code of okay. And we all know what that song would sound like. It would be 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton, traditionally executed on the piano, but you'd nail it on the trombone and people would be captivated. They'd say, I've never heard that before. And you wouldn't even have to be good for people to be drawn to that. But you got to be careful with it as well. Make sure you're only playing that tempting track to people who try to not pay you if you solve a rat problem for them. But what would that song sound like, Kyle? What would it sound like? And then you torch them with the flamethrower. Because remember, there's no guarantee, Kyle, that you are going to be near a body of water. And we want this business to thrive. There's a lot of cities that are landlocked, and you can't just play the trombone and lead the rats into a lake. In the original story of the Pied Piper, no flamethrower necessary, because that lake was just such a layup. He knew that the rats were going to love the music, would want to give him a standing ovation, but wouldn't know how to clap, and then all of a sudden they're toast. What a genius. Let's just call it like we see it, right? Both musically and in terms of his strategic thinking. But the flamethrower is necessary, Kyle. It totally is. And that goes for the rats as well as what we were just talking about. The people who try to weasel their way out of paying you. That would be devastating, right? And you can't count on established authorities to do the right thing, right? Because our justice system is crumbling, and criminals, white collar, blue collar, they're allowed to just do whatever they want. But it was also like that in Hamlin in the 1300s. Where were the authorities to take the mayor aside and say, you're going to jail? You had a contract with this rodent rock star, and you totally blew it. I'm serious. If anybody had stepped up and confronted the mayor, whether they had any kind of official job title that would warrant such a confrontation, or whether it was just an ordinary citizen and just taking the mayor aside and saying, have a seat over there, I got some shit to say. You are not okay. And we could use that in the modern era as well. You don't need to be on the Supreme Court to say, I'm calling BS on everything that you're doing, Eric Swalwell or AOC. So many politicians think they're above the law, Kyle. That mayor did. Many politicians, captains of industry now, they think they can just do whatever they want. And we can see how that goes off the rails pretty quick. Leads to literal rat infestations and some that are metaphorical. I don't want to get into this, although I am tempted, but you can look at a lot of the problems proliferating in modern society as rat infestation adjacent. Negligent leaders who are sinister, maybe alcoholics, and have gambling issues, who think that the party's just never going to stop and they can do whatever they want and launder money through elaborate cryptocurrency schemes and tell the population that they're terrorists. That doesn't sit right with a lot of people, believe it or not. But this could be a great business, Kyle. That's kind of what I'm trying to say to you. I want to encourage you, Kyle, to get into role as a combat bard. Go to the websites. Avoid the temptation. Those beautifully crafted clickbait propositions, because they're not ads. Kyle, they're promises. Calvin Star Cluster, metal detector hobbyist. Jenny Goldenrod, cave diver. Bing Gargoyle, cheese expert. Clyde McCullough, horse psychologist. Fondue Bookman, bail bond agent. Can you imagine the freedom any of those names and accompanying occupations might provide, Kyle? That's what you're up against when you fly close to the sun that is the rat tunes. You got to be careful, or else your wings burst into flames, and then all of a sudden, maybe you make the wrong choice. And adopting a new persona, although tempting, would probably be for the wrong reasons. Running away from something rather than toward something. I can get behind Kyle, combat bard, but I don't know if I can get behind Dick Uptonley, life coach. Kyle, combat bard, is solving problems, real problems. Dick Uptonley, selfish. Dick Uptonley is just trying to get away from it all. Rats are everywhere, and he's saying, what if I just took a personal vacation and avoided all these rats? It's a seductive trap, though, Kyle, if you've got a big imagination, which I know you do. But it's a trap. Because no matter where you try to escape, there is going to be a rat infestation there. And you're just going to wish that you had stepped up and used your God-given gifts to be the hero and the leader that the situation called for. Maybe even do it with a dog, Kyle. You get a couple dogs. But I can imagine a lot of different possibilities. When somebody says to me, what do you think about a fake passport? I can come up with a lot of possibilities. But none of them are rooted in who I am at my core and what I should be doing. Kyle, I know you've got music in your heart and violence in your soul. And that lends well to being a combat bard. The writing's on the wall. You're not a life coach, Kyle. But I can come up with these pretty much forever. I'm on a roll. I can't miss right now with all these potential identities. Ace Javelin, rodeo clown. Francois Prophet. Occupation for that one, Kyle? Decision maker. Dyson Pigeon, robot historian. I can keep coming up with these for days, Kyle. All these paths. Smithers H. Philanthropy, landscape photographer. Samantha Tenderloin, field hockey coach. Morpheus Spaniard, Segway mounted tour guide. Codsworth Macaroni, lava lamp evaluator. I'm serious, Kyle. Try these on for size. Dare to dream. Okay, pal. In your mind's eye, place yourself in the shoes of Appleby Reaganomics. Entry-level insurance agent. Leslie Frostbite, amateur graffiti artist. Wanderfoot Unicorn, gas station attendant who works the graveyard shift. Bob Pirate, interior decorator. Sugarcane checkerboard, storm chaser. Are these names and ideas lighting you up right now, Kyle, and everybody listening? Because that's the kind of stuff that you're going to have to avoid if you go on the darknet looking for rat songs. Flamingo Cartwright, chef. Flintlock meatloaf, chainsmoker. Hercules mixed strategy, travel agent. I'm making this worse for everybody listening to this right now, because we've all had the impulse of, hey, what if I just moved to Idaho and got out of wherever I'm at and I just did something different? We might have a crisis on our hands right now, Kyle, which is a lot of fake identities, because these are not casual. Tamashiro Vodka, aspiring Yelp reviewer. Sylvia St. Rum, middle school custodian. Patricia Rest Stop, Walmart greeter. Fantasia Peachtree, Etsy shop operator. Johnny Dumbledore, petting zoo intern. You're going to have to shy away from all of these, Kyle, if you want to keep your eyes on the prize and reclaim cities. Doing the right thing, playing some tasty trombone music, the right kind though, and then torching rats, left and right. How about that? What an amazing episode this is. We have paid respect to the past, present, and future with this episode, Kyle, in a way that's uncomfortably powerful. But that's what we do on the DarbyCast, is it not? If you're new here and you somehow made it through this entire episode, wondering to yourself, hey, so where's this been? It's been here. And you might owe it to yourself to go back in the catalog and see what's really going on. There are a lot of episodes that are great. Send this to somebody today who has been struggling to think outside the box, and let them know that this world of ours is full of possibilities in a business standpoint and a personal one. But Kyle, let me issue a warning to you and to anybody who's thinking about maybe getting a fake passport or a fake driver's license. Do it for the right reasons, or else that's disgusting. And if you take that plunge and you think about being somebody different, just know that it's okay to be yourself as well. It's better than okay. You can make a difference in this crazy world of ours, no matter where you're at or what your name is. You can murder rats in creative ways. You can tell politicians, stop what you're doing, or else. You can be a great friend. You know, with all those names that I mentioned and the potential for each of those names, you know what underscores all of those occupations? Tremendous friend with family values and somebody who appreciates JC in a big way. But as this world of ours is changing, just know that there will be opportunities for looking forward to the future, but also rediscovering things in our personal pasts that make us feel A+. You know, the Pied Piper story stops at him icing a bunch of kids. And maybe he assumed a new name and went to a different kingdom, tried to outrun his past. The fact that he was responsible for the deaths of more children than most. But when he was role-playing as another person, I bet you he found himself and he rediscovered the fact that he liked music. And it wasn't about all the hype. It wasn't about the rats. It wasn't about the mayor. It wasn't about all the dead kids. It was about music at its core. But rats are disgusting and need to be killed, so both of those things are actually true at the same time. Be true to yourself, do what's right, and don't be afraid to see what happens with a fake identity. Maybe, I don't know. Probably don't do that. But that's DarbyCast Wildcard Friday.